we export this model from our 3D modeling software as a single model, okay? But for using GeometryMask feature inside Substance Painter, we need to detach the model to sub-objects, and please use the clear name for yourself. And as you can see, I have 4 different objects, and let's export this model with these 4 different elements as a variation number 3 for the pot, and re-import the pot inside Substance Painter. Okay, now I'm going to replace the version 3. Okay. Everything is like before because there is no difference inside the UV, the texture set name, and etc. We just separate the object to sub-object, okay? And let's create a fill layer. I'm going to call it test. And in the layer, you can see GeometryMask feature in here. And when you click on this little empty square, you can see in the properties window, we have GeometryMask option. And we have body, handles, lead, screw. And these are the sub elements or sub object that I create inside 3ds Max. Okay. So in here, when you check something, it means you want to have that object, the whole object, as white area in the mask. So when I need to have lead as a mask part for the test layer, I just need to use this square check here. Okay. And this is not only way that we can use GeometryMask inside Substance Painter. So when we choose something in the GeometryMask, okay, and when we go back to the fill layer, we have a little icon here that we can use to isolate the area that we mask. Okay, it's like when we use isolation or focus mode on the texture set list, but this is inside the texture set and it's work on the layer. Okay, so let's go over the body and screw and change the color. And as you can see, we can change the layer and we can see the different result inside viewport. And in this way, we can use GeometryMask. It's a powerful way, it's a new and modern way to use masking on the geometry in the layer section, and we can create focus mode inside the texture set on the complex model. Okay, so please be aware that if you want to use masking very well, masking geometry, you need to give proper name to the sub-object inside the 3ds Max, Blender, or any software that you use. Okay, let's go for the anchor point. Okay, I'm going to explain the concept of the anchor point for you, but don't worry if you cannot understand the way that we are use of anchor point, because in the future project we are going to use anchor point a lot, and the concept is so simple, but we need to understand that concept to use anchor point in proper way. So let's create a fill layer and name it 1, and we just need to have color and roughness, okay, like this. And I'm going to duplicate this layer and rename it to 2, change the color to red, and duplicate again, and let's rename it to 3 and change color to blue. Okay, let's add black mask to all of them. And this is what I'm planning to do. I want to create a paint layer here, name it paint, and I just want to paint like this. Okay. And I want to create a dynamic relation between this paint layer and these three different masks and layers and create a new structure for myself. So how can I use the data inside paint layer in layer number 1, layer number 2, and layer number 3? I need to use a function inside Substance Painter which is called AnchoirPoint. And with AnchoirPoint, I can grab the data inside one layer and use it in top layers. Okay, so how we can add AnchoirPoint? We can just right click on the layer that we want and we need to add AnchoirPoint. So in this AnchoirPoint, I just grab all the data that I have, and now I can go to the mask, for example, and add a fill layer. For using AnchoirPoint, you need to use fill layers. Okay, so let's go for the AnchoirPoints and load paint. And in the paint, we can reference to a specific channel. If we place AnchoirPoint on a fill layer or on a paint layer, because we have different channels over there. But when you put AnchoirPoint on a mask, there is no channel to reference because we have just one single grayscale. Okay, so we have reference channel to the base color, and we have just only base color inside the layer that we paint. So let's go back to the mask, and in the fill layer I have base color. Let's change it to roughness. There is nothing over there, so we can just use the data that we have on that layer. We have a level for fill layer when we use AnchoirPoint, and we can play with the level to, for example, increase the brightness or decrease the brightness. Okay, like this. So let's go back to the paint, and now I'm going to create another paint here. So as you can see, we just create a dynamic relationship between paint and the layer number 1 with single AnchoirPoint. And it's very important to the reference channel that we select and the data that we paint, because if I turn off the color and just use roughness, as you can see, or just use roughness number 1, as you can see, there is no updating in the fill layer number 1 because we reference base color channel, not roughness. And when we change the reference channel from base color to roughness, the mask is going to be changed. So let's go back. In the erase mode, I just need to erase roughness data. That's it. And let's go back to the color and what we can do with this kind of dynamic relationship. For example, we have the base, and let's add another fill layer. Let's load a pattern, for example, this checker, and increase the tiling. You can increase the tiling inside the pattern option. And let's change the blending mode to multiply. Okay, so this is the effect that we can have inside Substance Painter with this relation. So we can erase the data. Okay, like this. and everything is on dynamic level. So let's erase all the data. That's it. What if I just paint on the layer and I add another sublayer as a paint and paint over there? What's happened? Because we define everything correctly and we paint exactly what we paint on the paint layer, the original one. The anchor point is going to collect the data on down layer. Okay, so if we put the anchor point upper than paint layer, it's going to load the data into the mask that we create. Okay, let's rename the paint to extra. So this is the extra layer, as you can see. And if extra layer is moved to up level, it's not going to calculate in the dynamic relation. But when the anchor point is upper, as you can see, the extra is inside the mask. Okay, so let's go and use anchor point in the mask. So we just grab this mask, the result, and we are going to use the anchor point in here. Okay, and we can add height instead of color and roughness, and boom, we can play with the level, as you can see, and we can have different variation. And please attention to the reference channel. We don't have it because we create anchor point inside mask. Okay, so we can do another thing. It's a common technique to create, for example, outline inside Substance Painter. So I'm going to load the paint anchor point inside the third level that we have. Okay, that's it. And let's bring up the whiteness. Okay, like this. And I'm going to use a filter like bevel or blur. It's not important. I'm going to use blur. And let's bring up the intensity. I'm going to duplicate the fill layer that I create and load the paint anchor point inside it and put it after the blur and change the blending mode to subtract. And as you can see, we have outline for the mask. Okay, let's create height and boom. And whenever I go to the paint layer and just paint something, as you can see, we have a dynamic relation that we can use in this structure that we create. And it's not related to the paint, actually. Let's clear all the data. Let's remove the extra that we have. I'm going to add a fill layer, and inside the fill layer, and due to create a relationship between paint anchor point to other masks in base color channel, I just keep the base color. And let's load some percentual map inside the base color, for example this one, and let's increase the tiling amount. Let's invert it. Okay, and let's put the fill layer before the anchor point. Okay, everything is fine, but the main issue is the color of this layer it's going to affect on the material, and it's not what I want. So there's some way to control this. The first one is decrease the opacity. Okay, it's not working. Why? Because we are going to disable the data inside base color. So let's bring back and let's change the blending mode to something like disable. It's the same. Okay, so let's go back to the normal. Let's hide the fill layer. It's the same. Okay, let's decrease the opacity of the layer itself, not sublayer. It's working. Okay, and let's hide the layer itself. It's working. Why? Because we are just hiding or disabled the effect of the whole layer, and the data that we are using, it's on the fill layer, sublayer. Fill layer as a sublayer. Okay, so in this way we can have the data and it's not affected on the material. And for example, we can have this kind of effect with using anchor point. We can change, for example, the rotation, the border width. We can change the whole pattern. Okay, and this is the main concept of anchor point inside Substance Painter. We just create dynamic links between layers, and we can use the data between layers and etc. So you are going to see many techniques, many ways, and many times of using anchor point inside the project section. So this is the anchor point. You need to understand the concept, and after that you can create magic inside Substance Painter.